So first I'm going to talk about the mechanics of blocking, the math behind it. That's shield versus no shield versus hands. This is in the Oblivion Remastered. I'm going to talk about the differences between one-handed and two-handed weapons and what you should pick. It's obviously one-handed weapons. It's not even close. The rate that skills level, in particular weapon and magic skills, and talk about the math behind that. And then talk about my complaints and changes that I wish happened. So first, we're going to dive right into blocking. In the remaster, the way the block skill works is at no block skill, if you're using a shield, you take 40% of the damage. So you reduce 60% damage. A Clanfear on Adept deals 20. I tested this. A Clanfear was dealing 8 damage to me, blocking with an Iron Shield and a Daedric Shield. It didn't matter my type of shield. Didn't matter my strength. Didn't matter anything except my block skill. At 0 block skill, I took 8 damage. As I increased my block skill with all these numbers, these were the damages I take. I did not test the 95. I just wanted to show that at 95, I was taking less than 1 damage. I actually couldn't quite tell what was going on there. But if I followed this formula, this is what the damage would look like. It's 1 is my damage taken, so this is my multiplier, minus 0.6 plus my block skill divided by 250. So basically as my block skill goes up, this multiplier to my damage taken is going to go down. The difference without a shield, I used a silver claymore, is instead of starting at 0.4 for your multiplier, taking 40% damage, you start at 0.6. So instead of having a 60% damage reduction, you have a 40% damage reduction. But each point of block skill increased the improvement, that multiplier, at the same rate. It decreased that damage taken multiplier at the same rate. So this is a Clanfear on Adept at 0 block skill, blocking with a two-handed sword. I took 12 damage, 10, 8, 6, and 4 at those ones that I tested. And then dragging out the formula, assuming everything's the same at 95 block skill, I would take 4.4 damage. I also want to show you, at 100 block skill, I'm sure you see it right here, you take no damage at all. None. Doesn't matter how strong they are. If you're using a shield, you have 100 block skill, you take no damage. So I summoned a cave boss, which is an ogre that can deal 40 damage per swing. I set some of my stats pretty high, and I set my block skill to 100. I am using just a plain iron dagger and a rusty iron shield. I did over repair it because whatever. But I want to show that this guy does no damage. My health bar doesn't even appear. He's dealing about 20 fatigue per swing because he normally deals 40 damage. And at Master, your fatigue damage is 1/2. The fatigue cost to block is 1/2 of their base damage. So if I block, here, we'll see when I'm at full fatigue, 733, I'll be at 713 right after the hit, 713, because it's 20 fatigue cost because he deals 40 damage. This is true even if I set it, that was on Expert, even if I set it to Master, he's still going to do no damage and do the same amount of fatigue cost. As you can see, that fatigue's going down just 20. So blocking is incredibly powerful. I have no armor on this character. And if I was fast enough and I could escape, I could always let my fatigue recharge. Obviously, that you'll need a high agility too to do that. But this character only has 40 agility right now. So late game, with a high block skill, you are effectively invulnerable with a high agility because you can avoid all damage with just a shield. And it doesn't matter that it's not a Daedric shield, it's just an iron shield. If I set that block to 0, and I use a Daedric shield, and I change it to Adept, he is going to deal to me, he dealt 15 damage. And that's because now my Daedric shield does provide 8% armor, and so instead of dealing 16 damage at 0 block skill, like he should because I have 0 block skill, he's actually only going to do about 14 or 15 because I'm stopping 8% of the damage and blocking as well. So it's on top of that. They work multiplicatively together, not additively. At 22 armor and 95 block, I should take 0 damage here, but he's still going to hurt me a little bit every hit. So I'm at 978, 976. So he's not doing a lot of damage because I have 95 block and I have 22% armor, but they don't just add together in those damage reductions. Back in classic Oblivion, the way blocked work is, well, at no block skill, it actually didn't do anything, and it just reduced damage taken by 1% of your block skill. So if I have 25 block skill, I stop 25% damage. In both versions of the game, this is multiplied by your armor. So if you have 50% armor, this damage would just become 10, and so all of the damage will be cut in half, obviously. The damage taken in Classic, however, as you can see, is much higher than it is in the remaster. In fact, 100 block skill against a Clanfear in Classic on normal difficulty would deal 9 damage. where at no block skill, blocking with the shield in the remaster would deal 8, so deal less. Now part of that is the Clannfear damage went from 36 in Classic Oblivion to 20, so that's one reason it feels easier, but another reason is the block skill was massively buffed. So if you're wondering why Adept is so easy, this is another reason as well. Block was never nearly this powerful. It's very strong. It also used to cap at 75%. It couldn't reduce your damage taken by more than 75% and it would stop. So I had to add this if stuff in there that as it gets beyond 75, it just stops at this multiplier. People are more interested in the remaster though, so I'm going to focus on that more and talk about that more. Next, hand-to-hand. In Classic, it didn't stop any damage. And now, instead of starting at 0.6, it starts at 0.8. But it does function the same way. As my block skill went up, I ended up with that 0.4 multiplier. But notice, at 100 block skill with your hands, that multiplier is the same as 0 block skill with a shield. So a shield is just the way to go if you're trying to stop damage. It's way better. It's a massive difference. Obviously, if you can get to 100, it's absurd. But even before that, it's just starting at a very strong multiplier. One way to think about it is blocking with the shield is like adding 50 skill compared to no weapon, and compared to hand, like adding 100 skill. Just to show a quick multiplier, and I'm going to show the graph of this too. If I don't have a shield on, I'm taking 1.5 times more damage blocking than I would with a shield at 0 block skill. Shields get way better as you gain more block skill. So at 50, blocking with the shield would be double damage compared to blocking without a shield. At 75, it would be triple. At 95 skill, you'd actually be taking 11 times more damage blocking without a shield. And at 100, well, I'm dividing by 0 because blocking with a shield at 100 skill takes no damage. And the graph looks like this. So at 50 skill, I would be taking double damage without a shield. This is assuming you are blocking. As you get your skill up closer to 100, well, it just skyrockets to infinity. Now, obviously, in the game, this would be not continuous. It would be discrete. So I would have, like, it stops at 91. It's 6.5 times more valuable. And as you get to 99 skill, well, I have to zoom way out to get to 99 because the multiplier is just absurdly high. Using a shield versus not using a shield. If I'm not using a shield, I will take 51 times more damage at 99 block skill. And that's because at 99 block skill with the shield, you're essentially stopping all damage. Now, the weakness of this is it takes fatigue to block. I had to test some things. I used a Clannfear, an Ogre Cave Boss, and a Wolf. First, I tried no armor, no blocking. These damages are correct. The Clannfear was dealing 20 damage on Adept, the Ogre Cave Boss was dealing 40, and the Wolf was dealing 5 damage to me consistently. My fatigue used, well, on Novice and Adept, so from 0 to 49 block skill, at 0 and 25, it took 40 fatigue to block the Clannfear. So it was double his damage. At Journeyman, it went down to 30. Expert, it went down to 20. And Master, it went down to 10. This was consistent across all of them. As you can see, early game, your fatigue cost is double the damage they're dealing. Then it goes to 50% more. Then it goes equal to the damage you're dealing at 75 skill. And at 100 skill, it is half the damage they are dealing. I'm assuming Journeyman and Master here with the Wolf were rounding things. 5 times 1.5 is 7.5. In game, it looked like 8 fatigue. So I just put, these are the numbers that I actually saw in game. However, I do want to mention, difficulty does not change the fatigue cost. This was the same on Master and Novice. I also had to double check. I've heard so many different things about Expert and Master. Expert is definitely 3.5 times damage. The Clannfear was dealing 70 damage on Expert with no armor and no blocking. And Master is 6 times. He was dealing 120, not 100, so it's not 5 times. It's definitely 3.5 and 6. I just want to clarify that because there's a lot of confusion around that. Real quickly, because I love Classic, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Classic Oblivion. So with the shield, compared to Classic Oblivion, you're stopping 2.5 times more damage. And at 95 skill, you're stopping 12.5 times more damage because it keeps getting more and more ridiculously powerful. And without a shield, block is still a lot stronger than it was in Classic, because in Classic, at 100 skill, it would stop 50% damage. It was just your multiplier was 1, because that's your damage taken, minus half of your block skill, that as a percentage. So if I have 50 block skill, I'd stop 25% damage. At 100 block skill, I'd stop 50% damage. And so now it's just much more valuable. So even if you're not using a shield, compared to Classic, blocking with a two-hander is still very valuable in the remaster. It stops a lot of damage. I'm going to talk next about why one-handeds are better, and it's not even close. So first, they can use a shield, and their blocks, they're stopping 91 times more damage at 99 skill. It's more than that. The swing speed was changed in the remaster. Claymores now only have a speed of 0.32, and I tested their swings. I did about these amount of swings in 10 seconds which is this amount of seconds per swing, they seem proportional. I don't know exactly what these speeds represent because my swings per second was 1.8 and 0.8, so I don't quite understand. And my seconds per swing were these numbers, and none of them match up with the speed listed in the UESP. They are still proportional. These are my rounding numbers. I'm cutting them off to make my spreadsheets cleaner, and they're very, very close. This is probably just my human error using my stopwatch. I'm assuming that these speeds are proportional because it looked to be that way. Part of the error in my testing is daggers have a 4-swing pattern and claymores have a 2-swing pattern. Here, I'll show you that. So a dagger has a 4-swing pattern like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. If you just keep spamming, there's like that little delay between each 4 attacks. So I don't know exactly what the 0.75 speed is referring to. And then if I hold power attacks, I just do a 1, a stab over and over again like that. That's the power attack. And if you have a direction, it's a different animation, but it seems to be the same speed no matter the direction. If I switch to a Daedric Warhammer, this has the longest reach in the game. You know, I can hit him even from back here. So the reach is pretty nice, but it's not that good. It's been nerfed from Classic. And as you can see, if you look carefully, he moves backwards every time I hit him. So you see that kind of like slide backwards? If I do a power attack, he slides back even a little bit farther. The issue is, in Classic Oblivion, you could keep swinging when you're out of fatigue. And you just swung really, really fast. Like 2.5 times as fast. So every 2 swings, I could have been doing 5 swings in that amount of time. And I would have pushed him back 5 times as far, and I could functionally stop him from ever getting near me in Classic. But in the remaster, that knockback's just not enough. And you don't stagger enemies anymore. You can do shield bashes will stagger, and there's some other staggering that can happen, but it doesn't seem like higher physical damage causes more staggering. So if I set my blunt skill to 0, you'll see now he doesn't really get pushed back very far. It's much smaller, but it's still not enough to keep him at bay like it would be in Classic. And so that knockback isn't really worth it, and that's why daggers are just always the way to go. Because sure, that knockback's not that great. Well, and you know, this is an iron dagger, so it's doing 4 damage. But even if it had higher damage, I don't need knockback with the dagger. The way to play now that block is so powerful is you get up in there, you let him hit you. Here, I'll toggle his AI back on. You let him hit you, and then you get some swings in. And that's how you have to play. And you can use Restore Fatigue potions, Restore Fatigue spells, or you can back off if you have enough speed to get some of that fatigue boosted. The way to play is now, it's not like it was in Classic where it was clearly to hit him and get out of there and to use knockback. Now it's just get in, block, get some swings in. Because block is so powerful, reach is not very good, and knockback has been nerfed so much. This is just numbers straight from the UESP. This is the remaster, and this is Classic. So what happened to one-handed weapons is most of them are 2 times slower. But their reach changes were very minuscule. It's above 1 because I'm doing Classic divided by remaster. So the remaster had more speed and more reach. But the speed was cut in half, the reach was slightly nerfed. With two-handed weapons, the speed is 2.5 times slower. So it's much slower for all of them. And the reach was reduced by a larger percentage proportionally. So compared to the Classic Oblivion, two-handed weapons received a bigger nerf. For example, the Claymore was 20% slower with 30% more reach than a longsword. But in the remaster, it's 36% slower with only 22% more reach. So it's kind of a swing in both ways. I also have to talk about knockback. Now that weapons are so slow, knockback is not nearly as valuable. If you ever played Classic Oblivion, you could swing the weapon really fast, like swing, 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 and this allowed you to knock people back. Here, I'll show you my test here really quick. This was from a video about Patrician TV. So this was a video I made a while ago that was demonstrating knockback, and when you hit an enemy, they get pushed back. And also back in Classic Oblivion, as you see, I staggered the skeleton there. He's staggering me. There's a lot more stagger where you're not able to hit, and that rate was much higher if you had higher physical damage. Also, how far they got pushed back was higher if you had higher physical damage. So if I was using a two-handed claymore there instead of a longsword, that glass longsword, I would be able to keep him at a distance and hit him when he couldn't hit me. But because I was using a one-handed, he was hitting me as well, and it was kind of a give and take. So back in Classic, two-handed had big advantage over one-handed because of that reach and higher damage. So you staggered more, you knocked them back farther, and you could hit them when they were farther away. Where one-handed, the big advantage was wearing a shield gave you a massive armor boost, because you don't need any enchantments or any spells to reach the armor cap with a shield, where you do without a shield. And blocking is also another way to help stop damage. So it was a give and take for what you wanted exactly. So really, let's recap. Why is two-handed so much worse? Well, the knockback changes. Because you attack so slowly, you're not actually really knocking enemies back much, and you can't fortify fatigue, so you can't do extra damage. Even at the highest levels of damage, the knockback with the reach changes, you're just not able to keep enemies at a distance like you could in Classic Oblivion. So that's just not really a factor anymore. You can't use a shield, so your block is way worse, and your armor doesn't reach the armor cap at 100 heavy armor and over repaired with Daedric armor or glass armor at 100 skill. It's only in the 66 range. If you're using a one-handed and a shield, you don't need any enchants. You can just get the 85 armor cap with no enchants, with no spells. Also, I'm going to show you why Blade, Blunt, and Hand-to-Hand level up much slower than they did in Classic. The slower attack speeds were slightly offset by increased gain. So Blade was 0.5, went up to 0.6. Blunt was 0.5, went up to 0.7. Hand-to-Hand was 0.6 and went down, and I'm assuming that's because they're trying to normalize these for attack speed. However, what happened is major skills used to be 5/3 for their multiplier for your experience increase. Now they're only 8/7. So it went from a 66% increase to experience to an only 12.5% increase to experience. And what this looks like is, I know this is a crazy looking table, but what this table is showing here is how many swings it would need to gain each level. And so now to get from level 5 to 100, as a major skill and a combat specialization, you would need to swing 11,000 times. Hand-to-hand would be 13,000 times. These numbers are worse than they were in Classic Oblivion. In Classic Oblivion, as a specialization and major skill, Blade took 9,200 swings, Blunt took the same amount, and Hand-to-hand took less than 8,000 swings. So look at that number right there. 7,664 is now 13,400. So you need a lot more for hand-to-hand. Hand-to-hand had a massive nerf to how fast the experience goes up. It is much, much, much worse. And Blade and Blunt also each take more. Even though they each swing 9,196, Blade is now 11,000. It's 2,000 more swings, and you swing twice as slow, even with a dagger. Compared to if you're using a two-hander, you swing 2.5 times as slow. So I would argue it levels half as fast. So there's massive nerfs to how fast Blade, Blunt, and Hand-to-Hand level up. They're way slower. It's way harder to level them up now. This is just showing the actual difference. So Blade needs 17% less swings in Classic. Blunt needed 4% less. And Hand-to-Hand is over 42% less. It's a massive reduction in XP per swing. They swing slower. So I'm also going to talk soon about why magic skills level significantly faster and talk about the specifics of that. This is also in the remaster. Block and Armorer, I just wanted to show you how fast they level. Assuming you pick them as a major skill and you specialize in combat, those last levels of block, it still takes 100 blocks attacked, 100 attacks blocked for each of these skills to get to the next level. So this is 99. At 99, you have to block 111 times, well, 112 because I'm rounding up here, to get from 99 to 100. It takes a very, very long time. I highly recommend using trainers, and I understand why people power level it because that's too much. It's too slow. Okay, next we're moving into magic skills, and this is kind of absurd and ridiculous. I'm going to walk us through it. This is Classic right here, what I highlighted. This is talking about the base experience per cast, the specialization. In Classic, it did not matter whether you cast a spell that cost 1 or you cast a spell with a magic cost of 20,000. They gave the same amount of experience. So the casts required to gain each level are listed right here, assuming you picked magic specialization and these as a major skill. So if we look at the bottom, Restoration took over 7,500 casts, and Destruction took 3,832 casts. They took a very long time to level. But in the remaster, well, now it depends on the magicka that you cast. So this is your experience per magicka spent, per your base magicka. So it's not exactly how much you're spending because at higher levels, you have a modifier, a multiplier for your magicka cost. So if I fortify my Destruction to 100, a spell that costs 100 normally as a base cost of 100 will only cost me 20 to cast. What I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to assume that throughout the entire game, getting up from skill level 5 to 100, I'm casting spells with an average base cost of 50. Well then, to get from 5 to 100, I only need to have 938 casts. So 938 compared to 7,600 for Restoration. So shown here, that means Restoration is over 8 times faster than it was in Classic Oblivion, and Destruction is over 4 times faster. If my spells, instead of saying 50, my average base cost throughout the whole time is 75, then Restoration is going to level 12 times faster, and Destruction is going to level 6 times faster. The big one here at the end, so what this is assuming is I'm going to use a varied cast rate. So for skills 5 to 24, I'm using 25 Magicka. That's because that's what I'm allowed to cast in those skill brackets as a novice. As an apprentice, I can cast skills up to 62 Magicka cost, meaning if I'm casting spells that cost 62, this is how much experience I'll get per cast. Then when I get to 50, the most I can spend is 149, which I'll get 32 Magicka per cost. And then as an expert, you can cast spells that cost up to 400. And so if you make a spell that costs 399 for a base cost, it will give you 86 experience per cast. Remember, hand-to-hand was giving 0.5 for a single punch. Now, these numbers are assuming that you pick Magic Specialization and Major, but I can show you in a minute that that's not even making a huge difference. To go from 99 to 100 Restoration, it takes 3 casts, 2.9 casts, versus 191 casts. Let me show you that. Okay, I have set my Restoration to 99. This is as a mage class, so I have Restoration as a major skill, and I'm specialized in magic. And I'm going to cast a spell that has a base cost, so I'm going to do Fortify Magic for 68 for 2 minutes. It has a base cost of 398.9. The most I can cast of any spell is 399. If I got to 400, it would say I need to be a master in Restoration to cast it. This is only going to cost me at this skill level 84. So it's giving me experience as if I'm casting a spell that costs almost 400, but it's only costing me 84 because of my Restoration skill. I cast that once, twice, and by the way, this is a level 1 Breton. I don't have anything special going on. I did pick the Apprentice Birth Sign. Cast it a 3rd time, and that's a 100 Restoration in 3 casts. Now, obviously, I couldn't get to 99 just sitting in the sewers. I used console commands, but I want to show you how fast that leveled up. All right, now I'm doing the opposite. I have a Paladin class. This character has combat specialization. I have Blade as a major skill. As you can see, it's set to 99 and has no experience gained within it yet. So it's kind of the same test, but instead of using Restoration, how quick I can get that from 99 to 100, I'm going to see the fastest way I can get Blade from 99 to 100. So I'm using the fastest weapon I can. I toggled the AI of this Clanfear and I set it to Master difficulty, so he has the most health he possibly can. I'm just going to attack him as much as I can until I'm out of fatigue, I guess, and then we'll see how much experience I gained. Okay, so there is a little bit of a delay, so maybe, yeah, I won't say it yet, so maybe I'll block or something. There. So that amount of attacking got me that much experience. So Blade levels up much slower than magic skills. And this just seems a lot more reasonable within the gameplay. You know, it is a level 100 skill that I'm trying to get, so you would think it would take a long time. It's just frustrating that it's so much slower than what Classic Oblivion was. That's because Restoration levels 23.7 times faster in the remaster. It's an insane boost if you are casting the maximum Magicka cost based on your skill level every time you can. If I drop my Magic Specialization and Restoration as a major, I would be using this experience per Magicka cost. This will change all these numbers, which still is only 493 casts to go from level 5 to 100. So this is as a minor, not specialized in. It's still 15 times faster than if I majored in it and spec'd into it in Classic Oblivion. The difference is staggering. I'm sure you've noticed magic skills level way faster. It's not even close. Conjuration did level 10 times faster than Restoration in Classic Oblivion. It had a base experience of 6, and so it did actually level pretty fast. It wasn't so crazy. If you specialized in it and majored in it, you didn't need to do a lot of casts. You were just leveling it really fast. And you can see right here, it says 767 for Conjuration in the UESP too. So it's not like just me making that up. My spreadsheet is accurate. So what should we do about it? Well, I think that magic skills should gain experience plus a % of the base cost. So for example, if they gain 4 plus 5% of the base cost, the graph would look a lot smoother. Different schools could have different values, just like Restoration and Conjuration were different. I don't think they should be that drastic because that was not pleasant, how hard it was to level Restoration and how easy it would be to level Conjuration. But so these were those caps. So for Novice, apprentice, journeyman, and expert, these are the most I could cast. And if I'm using this formula, 4 plus 5%, well, these would be the experience costs. I forgot to add the 4. These would be the experience that I would gain per cast with these levels of Magicka. So by late game, sure, if I got a very expensive spell, it would be giving me a lot of experience, 24. But 24 per cast is not nearly as insane as that 87 that it was before, and that's only if you're min-maxing. It would be less than half the XP of what it is now. It would be much slower. I think combat skills should be dramatically increased, probably doubled their base experience, or increase major skill bonus back to plus 66% instead of plus 14%. I think ideally, this is the ideal right here, a combination of these things. Combat skill experience should be doubled. At least 1 per swing for blade, 3 per block. Doubling experience would be a great starting point. Magic skill experience should be reworked and give either 2 to 4 plus maybe 5% of the base cost. You could argue 4%, somewhere in that range. And the boost to experience for major skills should be significantly higher, like 66%. This would make builds feel different. Right now, any character you make, it's going to be really easy to get all your magic skills to 100, and it's going to be very, very, very difficult to get blade, block, heavy armor to 100, which is annoying. Magic is already overpowered in Oblivion. It's already the best way to go. You should already just spam potions. Alchemy was massively buffed. Destruction's always been powerful. Restoration's always been powerful. And so now the meta of the game is just ignore everything about combat and be a mage. Way more than it was in Classic Oblivion. Because this was already a problem in Classic, but now the problem is compounded because skills are much harder to level up. And it pushes people to do boring things like go to Periite's Shrine and just attack for an hour on someone that doesn't respond. And I think that's a very boring way to play the game. I never recommend power leveling or playing that way, or just standing there casting a spell over and over and over again. You have to be a special type of person to enjoy that, and chances are you aren't. But all right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching.